Hi there, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are gathered here to talk about monsters in our midst for what was supposed to be Lyme Crime, the inaugural festival down in beautiful Lyme Regis, which has unfortunately fallen foul of lockdown, and sadly we can't do that, but we can be here for online crime, and I'm delighted to be joined by two dear friends and talented writers, Caroline Green and Tammy Cohen. And I'm going to give them a bit of an introduction and myself, and then we will move on to answering a few questions that we've devised of our own, and then a couple that we have trawled Twitter for, and we will be announcing some winners of some books as well. So I'm going to start with Caroline, who writes as Cass Green. Her debut adult novel, The Woman Next Door, was a #1 ebook bestseller, and her second, In a Cottage in a Wood, was a Sunday Times top 10 and a USA Today bestseller. Don't You Cry and The Killer Inside are her other standalone thrillers. She is also an award-winning author of fiction for young people. Her first novel, Dark Ride, won the Rona or R-O-N-A?
Either's fine.
Rona, I'm going with that because it's a little bit snappier. Rona Young Adult Book of the Year and the Waverton Goodreads Award. Cracks was recommended on Radio 4's Open Book, and Hold Your Breath won the Oldham Book Award. She is writer in resident at East Barnet School and has taught writing for children and crime fiction at City University and the Writers and Artists Yearbook. And Tammy Cohen has written 9 novels under her own name, including 6 psychological thrillers, the latest of which is Stop at Nothing. She has written 3 historical novels. Have you got a copy? There it is. Very beautiful. And we've got The Killer Inside as well, Kat.
I forgot to do it.
Sorry. And she's written 3 historical novels under the pseudonym of Rachel Reese, who I always joke is her far wittier, far more relative.
Far more glamorous.
The first, Dangerous Crossing, was a Richard and Judy book club pick, and the most recent, The Island of Secrets, which came out 2 days ago on Thursday, because we're obviously doing that.
Oh yeah, we're doing Graham Norton. Yes, 2 days ago.
2 days ago. We're actually filming this a little bit earlier, but so that came out on Thursday. And her books have been translated into a staggering 15 languages. She is a member of the Killer Women Crime Collective. And I'm Amanda Jennings. I write dark psychological dramas, and my 5th book, The Storm, is out next month. I think I've got a copy of it. I do. Seamless.
I have, because it just arrived.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh, you guys. The Sworn Secret, which is my debut, was a hit #1 in the Italian, or it wasn't a hit, it hit #1 in the Italian hardback chart and was a top 5 Kindle bestseller. The Judas Scar has been optioned for television. Not that we will probably ever see it. And In Her Wake was a W.H. Smith Fresh Talent pick. I appear often on BBC Berkshire Book Club to witter on about books, and have run workshops for local primary schools and a homeless charity that I volunteer at. I'm also a member of Killer Women. There we go. Is that the panel finished? That was a lot of words.
Here we go now.
Fantastic. So we're here today to talk about, we will talk about Rachel Reese as well, or just reference her whenever you want, Tammy. But we're talking about monsters in our midst. The 3 of us love our family dramas and our domestic dramas that have these characters causing chaos within, who share the monsters who share our space and our lives, and the people who turn normality dark and push everyday scenarios into crime scenes. And I think all 3 of us enjoy writing books that are darker. So I thought I'd start and ask you both why, as writers who want to entertain people, essentially, we're drawn to entertaining with darker themes. So I'll go to Tammy first.
Oh, why do I? Well, it's like that old Tolstoy thing, isn't it? That every happy families are just boring because they're just the same, whereas unhappy families, they're all different. And it's that interest, that kind of fascination with the little nuances of how the darker characters differ and how we spot them and how they affect us. They're just more interesting. That's why everyone remembers Hannibal Lecter and nobody else remembers anyone else from that series. And we want to explore them. We want to explore the things we're scared of, I think. Sorry, I'm just making you bigger, Amanda. You've gone very small on the screen. You want to explore the things that we're most scared of, and I think we're scared of we're scared of monsters, aren't we? And it depends. And we're scared of the monsters that are very obviously monsters like Hannibal Lecter's, but I think we're more scared almost of the monsters that hide in plain sight in our lives that we might not be able to spot. So I think that speaks to our deepest fears, is that we might find a monster close to home, someone that we share a breakfast table with, that we share a street party with, that you see at the school gates. And it's that thing where something awful happens and we go on the news and you see all those people in the street saying, but they seem like such a nice man. And he was a perfect father. And it's that thing that somebody might be hiding in our lives that is a monster or that has monstrous characteristics, and we might not know about it. The fear of that, the fact 1 in 4 violent incidents happens in the home, and I think we're very attuned to the fact that there might be some kind of violence near us, or that we might not be able to spot. So I think it's about exploring our fears, obviously within a framework that we can control. We can control whether there's justice meted out at the end and what happens to the monsters. And yeah, just they're just more interesting. What can I say?
And Caroline, what do you? I mean, obviously Tammy covered lots of.
Sorry. Yeah, I've just said it.
Anything else? After her PhD on monsters in our midst. Caroline, yeah, anything that you would draw on or expand on that Tammy touched on?
Well, it's funny because my family always tease me about some of my teachery kind of overexcited things about writing, because I find the whole kind of craft side of it really fascinating. I get all arm wavy and nerdy about it. And as they've heard me say so many times, that thing about conflict is just the engine and the heart of storytelling. And I think you've got to have dark, complex characters. You can't have people that are kind of too many characters that are just open books. But then you do wonder whether anybody really is like that. Is anybody really that straightforward? And it is that sort of the deeper side of somebody's psyche that I think is such an interesting thing to explore in fiction. And also it's that idea of, as well, when families, Tammy was talking about family, it's almost a bit like the whole image of the sort of the white picket fence American sort of ideal home, and then the sort of Twin Peaks reality of it. I think it's the same thing with families. It's sometimes it's the ones that that look like this perfect, because families are messy. We're all lucky enough to have families and kids here, but it's a messy, wonderful, but it's a business that's we're not perfect as parents. And when people seem to be a little bit perfect, I'm always a bit, what's going on there?
Yeah, I think the other thing about family is obviously you're completely tied with each other. So obviously you can become estranged, but you're still estranged from that family member, rather than friends, which you can sort of drift away from or separate yourself from. You're never truly going to separate yourself from family. So I think it's I think that's another thing about the family unit.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So we've all, obviously discussed, all written books with monsters somewhere in their centre. And I would like to ask, I'll probably go to Caroline first, but so of all your monsters, which one was your favourite to write?
I have written quite a few, actually, thinking about it, even not necessarily consciously. I have done this quite often. And some of them in the my book In a Cottage in a Wood, there was a literal, an almost literal monster, a very savage killer. But what really fascinated me with this one, I will hold it up this time at the right time, The Killer Inside, is that it's that notion of the sort of the hidden darkness in somebody. So the setup is as a young male school teacher. He's my main character, called Elliot. He's come from a very working class background, quite a dysfunctional kind of upbringing, and his wife is the beautiful Anya, who's this incredibly glamorous, had a sort of perfect childhood, best friends with both her lovely parents. And I just found this, I often find the sort of what if kind of scenario is my starting point quite often for stories. And I just had this image of this family being so close that they would bond together over very dark deeds. And the whole thing about class fascinates me as well, because I came from, feel like I've moved up as an adult. So I didn't come from particularly salubrious upbringing. So the idea that he would feel intimidated at first by this family, and then so grateful to be welcomed in, but actually they're not good people. And Anya, the character of Anya, she's really quite a bad person. She really is a monster, but it takes him quite a while to be able to see that that's the case. How about you, Amanda? What would you say was your favourite?
Shall I reach for my book?
Reach for your book.
So yeah, no, actually, genuinely, often you're on panels where maybe you're sort of shoehorning your books to fit the subject, but for this one, it really does work for this book. So I've got Nathan, who you start off in this book with this marriage between Hannah and Nathan, and you just cannot understand why this woman would stay married to this man. He's I didn't want to make him violent. I didn't want her to be physically threatened. I wanted it all to be sort of coercive control and sort of psychological abuse, and he just manages everything from what she wears that day to how she wears her hair to the receipts. He goes through every single receipt that she spends with a fine tooth comb and a passport locked away in a cupboard. And I think for me it was brilliant just to take away, to have, because she's a strong character. I've had a few early reviews that have sort of not missed the point, but sort of said, she seemed like a bit of a victim, but the whole point of this relationship is she's willingly taking part in this marriage for her own reason. And that's what we discover later on in the book, that there are reasons that she's married this man.
Clever, actually, I thought.
Well, I wanted to take that question. Thank you. I wanted to take that question that you hear so often with coercive control or sort of domestic abuse, where you're like, well, I don't understand why he or she stayed. And I wanted to answer that question, but in a sort of more complex, and actually give a reason why she stays. And that's obviously gone back. But yeah, I loved it. I've got every time, she walks into the room, he's sort of, staring at her, and she knows that he's just about to ask for a receipt or sort of say, why are you wearing that, or what you do. And so I think it was completely joyful.
So creepy. Who would you get to play him as a film when it goes to film?
Oh, when it goes to film. Oh, you already put me on the spot. I have no idea. Probably. I don't know. That really. Oh, I don't know. Could I just choose someone?
I would imagine him in a Cardi.
Oh, can we have Andrew Scott?
You always want Andrew
Still, my heart.
Yes, he'll do brilliantly.
Andrew Scott for every role.
For every role.
That's the problem.
He would be brilliant, because he would be. Thank you, Caroline, for bringing me in. But I'm going to throw the ball back to Tammy now and say to Tammy.
Well, most of the books that I write, most of the psychological thrillers, are the monsters in our midst type. So they're the people who are part of the group that we don't know which one is the monster until the end. So it is that thing that we were talking about earlier of, oh, but he looked like such a nice person, and then at the end you find out that they're nursing this other side, and like I say, that just fascinates me, that whole thing that people aren't just bad or just good.
Yeah.
That someone could go through their whole life and be perfectly normal and perfectly nice, but something might trigger them, or might trigger some context in their background, something that then brings out this monstrous side that might be dormant in any other circumstances. And I find that so fascinating that you could.
Well, you've had some really twisted evil ones in your background.
Yes, I have, and it's quite hard to talk about them because you don't find out till the end who the monster is. But quite the book that I literally just sent off today to my editor is again, it's in a destination wedding, and it's a tightly knit kind of wedding party. So there's a family and a few hangers on, and the tensions are building through this week on this Greek island. And interspersed are excerpts from one of the characters' therapy journal that they're keeping for their therapist, and you can see where this character's triggers are, where the context is of that they came from, and how they might have, from this background that they grew up in, might have produced these monstrous qualities. But you don't know who it is, and it builds and builds and until right at the end. So it could be anyone, and that's
another,
me. But I did I wrote one monstrous. I'm just trying to see if I've got this book here. Yes, I have. Hang on.
Yes, and that's
my only one actual psychopath, and I absolutely loved it. I mean,
you had great fun. I mean, it's a really fun book. God. You had great fun writing that.
This is the only character I've ever written that does not have any context or any subtlety or any kind of any explanation. Really, I mean, he has a monstrous, you know, a dysfunctional, very highly dysfunctional upbringing, but he is a monster through and through, like a stick of rock, and it's so liberating to write someone like that, where you don't have to kind of give them any empathy or bother with any of that stuff, you know, because quite often when you're a writer, it holds you back, doesn't it? All the, yeah, but how would I react? How would so and so react? What would they be thinking? What would they be feeling? And the fact that you don't have to you know, you can't empathize with him and he can't empathize with anyone else is incredibly liberating. So I loved writing Dominic Lacey, his name was.
So the other thing I was going to talk about today, because as well as monsters hiding in plain sight, another staple of the psychological thriller Caroline is a good secret. So I thought, I was thinking about why, I mean, I don't know if there's a straightforward answer for this particularly, but why long buried secrets provide such rich fodder for the psychological thriller. Either, I suppose, as Tammy was saying, for providing backstory, but any other reasons that maybe we love these secrets as much as we love monsters?
I think it's because they sort of grow, don't they? Like somebody, if there's something a very damaging secret that one person might have, the very moment they share it with another person, and to be honest, it's very likely that the nature of the secret means there are already other people involved in it. Yeah. I don't see how it could be. I don't really know what it could be if it was literally you were the only person who knew something. And I think it's that way that it spreads and the sort of tendrils of it, and how it sort of spreads and causes damage, and almost a bit like I'm getting a bit metaphorical here, but I'm thinking about roots that grow under buildings and they foundations. It's a bit like that, isn't it? It's sort of they weaken things and they weaken people's resolve and they make them make bad decisions, and of course bad decisions are such a good thing. Another bad decision.
And I think you're right as well. When you've got a secret, especially some of the secrets that our books that we would write about, they have great power. The person who has the secret has great power over the people who would be affected directly by that secret. But also it's those long reaching effects. I think in my second book, Judas Scar, I had you know, a secret that had been kept quiet because it was the only way that he could carry on with life, and as soon as that had been picked off, his world collapsed because he wasn't able to process it. And I think that's probably the power thing is quite interesting. And
it's the lies, isn't it? It's the fact that you start off with this one secret, and even as you try and compartmentalize it, you're still having to tell lie upon lie upon lie, and then you start telling lies to yourself, and you try and justify it to yourself, and it just becomes this huge tissue of lies. And when that secret is exposed, then you look back on what's come, and everything is tainted by that lie, even the things that had nothing to do with that particular secret. Because of the lies you've told, everything has been tainted in your whole life by that.
Yes, maybe it's more the lies than the secret itself. Maybe it's more the lies that
yeah. I mean, when you read about people that had an affair exposed to them, so a woman, say, who found out her husband had an affair, and you always hear them say that means everything in our 20-year marriage has been a lie, because everything was affected by it, even though he had compartmentalized that very successfully, and it didn't have anything to do with her. And then you quite often hear that, but it had nothing to do with you, it was about me, and about, you know, but in the other person's eyes, it means everything they thought they knew about their joint history about the other person has been a lie. So like you say, it is a hugely powerful thing, a secret.
Yeah, and actually going on from just listening to you talk there, in that situation, that lie then opens out into the other, our other staple, which is betrayal. And I suppose gradually you work your roots, as you say, work through all the sort of brilliant, gory, fantastic human emotions that we all don't want to have to confront. So,
my second book was about a man who died in suspicious circumstances, and at his funeral, two women turn up who both think that they're his wife, and this is this man that has completely successfully compartmentalized his life and led a really happy life with two women, and then in the aftermath, all of his life, everything to do with both those families, becomes a lie and tainted and unreal, and it's just about the hugely destructive. I mean, that's a very big example, but secrets that people keep buried for years and years, when they're exposed, it's hugely destructive.
Yeah, that's quite a big secret. I think finding out my husband was married. Secret.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, there's something that slipped my mind to tell you. What was it?
Amazing. So the other thing that we did when we were preparing for this was go onto Twitter.
We prepared for it in 5 minutes. Yes.
I have notes. What are you talking about? So we went onto Twitter and we asked people to put some questions to us, and we would each choose one of the questions that was put to us and give our favourite question asked would win a copy of a signed copy of one of our books. Caroline, you can hold it up again. Yeah, not mine. So thank you. So we'll go to that now. So I was going to ask Tammy to shoot first with her favourite question.
Yes, well, my favourite question is from one of my favourite people, Derek Farrell, who is a brilliant novelist, a brilliant crime writer in himself, and he wrote, his question was, have you ever found yourself disturbed by how much you are empathizing with your monster? And I love the fact that it's my monster. It gives me kind of proprietorial edge to it. So yes, I'm using this book again because that is my real monster that I've created, this Dominic Lacey in this book. And yes, and it's not empathy. I didn't empathize with him at all, but I was very attracted to him, and that's the other thing about big proper monsters. And that's and you read that when you read about the psychopath test, or the fact, the tests about psychopathy, the fact that a big percentage of our wheelers and dealers and the kind of people at the head of industry and politics and whatever are fully fledged psychopaths, that they have that psychopathic trait. It's a very charismatic quality in a lot of people, and so it can go either way. So obviously, and it's the same, with Hannibal Lecter, you're drawn to them, and they're attractive characters because they have that lack of, I think the lack of empathy frees them up to do things and say things that other people might hesitate to, and that's quite attractive and quite you're just drawn to it. So when I was writing Dominic, I was just thinking, and he does some horrible things, and I was thinking, oh God, that's an awful thing to do. Oh God, that's awful. This is the book where I had to Google, can you make a candle out of human fat? So, and then was so worried I got rid of my whole search history.
But the computer.
But anyway, yes.
That sentence I'm going to sell this on Twitter with. Find out why
reprinted and reissued this year. So very timely.
Oh, that's great.
So I was thinking all the time, this is this monster. Oh my God, he's doing these terrible things. But at the same time, I really wanted to get to the computer and write his scenes in the morning, because it was so there was something so attractive about writing him and being in his head, and but just being able to do exactly what you want without having to empathize, without having to think of other people, it was just, you know, we're lucky we can do that vicariously. And I think that is a great thing to be able to do. Maybe I'll write one into my next book.
Yeah, you should do. This is definitely, I mean, he was a fantastic character, and I totally, you know, there is something incredibly I think writers, for my, I mean, I wouldn't want a sweet generalization, but I think I would be missing a trick if I didn't make some of my monsters just a little bit attractive or certainly.
But also, sorry, I'm just but the other type of monsters, the other ones that are in my books, I do empathize with them because they're always a product of their upbringing and the context from which they've come. You can't help when you're kind of threading that backstory through. You can't help but empathize with them. But it's the out and out monsters, the psychopaths, that you're attracted to.
And Caroline, have you got any that you...
Yeah, well, it's funny because at the beginning when you asked me the question about favourite monster that I've written, and I mentioned Anya from The Killer Inside, but actually I'm completely forgetting the fact that the worst one, definitely not necessarily my favourite because he's so terrible, but in the book that's not coming out until next year and got a title announced yet or anything, it's going to be very, very different things. Bit risky, bit scary, in that it's a sort of cross-genre supernatural crime thriller.
Wow.
And the guy in that is really incredibly horrible. I have a serial killer who targets people with sleep disorders, and he targets them through their nightmares.
Oh my God.
And I have to say, I'm quite glad to say that wasn't a character that I've written some bad people before that I've empathized with at times. I found this quite disturbing, and I literally would have to come away and look at some kittens or something, or puppies, because it really, being in his head, it was really hard actually. And it's had a funny knock-on effect that I've taken a swerve back towards children's writing and written a sort of really daft, silly book for 7 to 10-year-olds about a boy and a dog swapping bodies because I needed something to. I really needed to get away from the sort of darkness of that.
That's why I do the Rachel Reese, because it kind of gives me a break from the crime. When you're just doing the kind of darker side of things, it does kind of weigh on you.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I like Derek's question as well, actually, because obviously, again, you know, I'm at that stage where I'm just getting NetGalley reviews and bits and pieces like that through early readers, and there is quite a few people who have said to me, I spoke about how much of a monster I think Nathan is, and then how many people said I really felt sorry for him at the end. And someone actually said, I hope you write a sequel where we see Nathan getting his life back and he finds someone that he truly loves and he's happy. And
he doesn't deserve it.
I suppose that's because you guys are writers, but I suppose they're reading it from this idea, this poor, I did do the whole why is he like this, and he's like this because of tragedies in his early life, and all he wants is there's something that he wants as well. So I suppose in a way, I mean, maybe that, we're all sort of cynical old writers that know what each of us are doing. So we're like, I know why you did that in his backstory. But maybe for readers, you want to be able to feel conflicted character. And you want to feel, I think without empathy, unless you're writing these cool, fun psychopaths, which actually I'm desperate to do one day myself. And I think
too long. Messes with your head.
But I think you have to give your the monsters in our midst an empathetic side. Otherwise, why would they be in our midst? They wouldn't. They'd be ostracized and they'd be pushed away. So they have to have some attractive qualities. That means that they do end up marrying and having children and doing all the things that we put. Otherwise, as I said, they wouldn't be in our midst. So maybe we have to have empathy for them in some way.
Yeah.
That was a very wise point, wasn't it? I surprised myself with that. And Caroline, which question did you choose from Twitter?
So mine is from, I'm just looking at I've got it on my screen, my other screen here, from Ellen Davenport on Twitter. What is the scariest monster you've encountered? She said, in publishing or otherwise. I'm afraid it's not in publishing. She says, diplomatically. It's these two. No. No, but the reason I chose this, I think it's such a great question, is because I'm fascinated by this idea of our sort of instincts about people. And years ago, when I was a very young woman, I worked somewhere with this guy who was there was nothing wrong with him on the surface. He was incredibly nice and friendly. He was pretty good looking, actually, similar age to me, a little bit older, just quite charming. And I to this day, I can remember that the effect he had, all he had to do was to stand anywhere near me, and my entire flesh crawled with something. And it just fascinated me. And I used to feel so guilty because he was a nice guy, but I used to sort of make terrible jokes about how he probably had bodies in his freezer at home and things to my friend, because he just brought this out. And then I used to be a journalist, and I interviewed a guy who was an ex-policeman once, who'd written a book all about instincts and all this kind of thing. And I told him the story, and he said the number of times he's spoken to people who've had that feeling about someone who have later been attacked by them is many.
Wow.
And he said people tend to ignore it. And he said the number of times people would say, I had this real feeling that I shouldn't go down the alleyway, or I shouldn't be alone with that person, and I ignored it, and then something happened. So I'm fascinated by that idea. I really am. So it's not so much that I've met somebody. I mean, we've all met psychopaths. I've definitely worked with psychopaths before, psychopaths. But it's just this idea that there was something, maybe it was his pheromones and mine didn't match or something. He just made every bit of me go.
Like a visceral reaction every time.
A visceral reaction.
I had almost the opposite to that, weirdly, in that when I was, I used to work on true crime books years and years ago, and I did some research into a book about a woman. I won't say who it was, and she was a very a notorious case of a woman monster in our history. So when was that? About 15 years ago, something like that, 20 years ago. And she was in all the headlines, and her case was very horrific and monstrous, and she was really vilified in the papers, big headlines, terrible pictures, everything. And she was like the face of evil. That's what the headlines were all about: the face of evil, the face of evil. And then a couple of years ago, after I wrote a quick read, and I went and did quite a few sessions in prisons, and I went into a woman's prison, and she was there. And I'd spent months researching. I didn't write the book, but I helped research it. So I'd spent months researching this book, and I'd been completely horrified by her and believed that she had been monstrous and done these terrible things. But in the flesh, there was nothing to say who she was or what she'd done. Yeah. And I was so worried that she might recognize my name from the acknowledgements in the back of the book, but luckily she didn't. But yeah, nothing at all.
Was she in there found guilty, or was she still potentially? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So she was guilty. She had done everything that you said.
Oh yeah.
She was a lovely person.
Well, I'm not saying she was a lovely person. There was nothing that made me think, uh-oh, monster. You know, there was nothing that would have made you think twice. And that's what I was saying. And I remember at the time there were newspaper reports, and they spoke to people who'd known her, who just said, I can't believe it. And because she always seemed so nice. And there she was, and she did. And that's what we were saying before about the people that hide among us, who you never. And that's, I think, what we're most scared of, is those people that you don't get that visceral reaction to, that you do come to trust, that live amongst you and teach your children, and babysit and all those things. That you might not be able to tell. You might not be able to tell that man that your daughter is married to is a whatever it is. That the fact that are those senses that Caroline was talking about, those kind of spidey senses, the creepy crawly thing, that might not happen, because we all want that to happen. We want that to be our reaction to being around somebody that's evil, although I don't believe there's anyone really evil, but you want to think that you could tell, and actually most of the time we probably can't.
it's like walking into, because I don't believe in ghosts, and but I have to say that even someone, and and I'm one of these people that if someone says, oh well, I saw a ghost, I'll I'll want all the facts, and I'll try and work out really rational.
You're scared, but
yeah, exactly.
Scared of them, but I don't believe them.
Yes, exactly. Or that you've just seen that because you know that thing where you get out of the corner of your eye and that's what you saw, or whatever it is. But I do feel that you walk into some houses and you feel exactly the same. You feel a sort of immediate feeling, and often try, and people say, well, what about that feeling that you get into houses? I'm like, well, I think that's your sort of your head creating this sort of atmosphere, and then your body actually creates that. But I wonder whether we do get these, or maybe I am secretly a ghost believer, and these houses that I'm walking into and feeling are haunted, maybe they really are haunted. So it would be lovely to know. It would be much easier if we could all have Caroline's visceral reaction to monsters. Be great.
But then we'd all be out of a job, because imagine you're writing a book where every character is like, oh, you must be evil because I'm feeling like this. It's like,
and it's not happened to me a lot. Yeah, it's not something that's happened to me a lot either. That's the thing. It's not like I've gone through my life. I mean, there was one other person ever that I had that reaction to. So it was so strange. It was such a strong feeling.
You mentioned pheromones, didn't you? So maybe it's the sort of the antichrist of the sort of that immediate attraction that you have for certain.
Yeah, maybe it was just our smells didn't match.
Yeah, maybe you were allergic to him. And I chose a question, and I don't know her actual name. I might have met her at a festival, and if I do know her name, I'm really sorry. But the Twitter account is What Do I Read Now? And actually, I do talk to her quite a lot on Twitter, so it would be good to know your name if I don't know it already. And she said, and I think this is definitely going to pose this to all three of us, which is, do you come up with a twist first and work backwards, or do you see how the book evolves? I know that by answering my question, I'm going to answer Tammy's, but I don't know about Cass. So no, I am totally unplanned. I have a vague idea of what I want to write, a cast of rough, shadowy, misty characters that I sort of know roughly what their relationships are, and then I write. But the one thing I think that I did want to talk about, the reason I chose this question, was that actually something that's happened as I've become a little bit more experienced in terms of the number of books I've written, is that I find some of my twists come from a plot problem or a plot hole, or something that I've just written that's too coincidental or too nice, and just to keep the first draft going, I've sort of made something that on reading back is a little bit convenient, and then at that difficult moment gone away and sort of walk the dog or load the dishwasher and tried to solve that problem, and in solving it have come up with what would be probably called a twist. I'm not someone who writes massive twists. Tammy, that's more. I don't know, Caroline, are you massive twists?
I think twists are being overdone. I'm going to be controversial.
No, it's not controversial, because I hate them.
I think it's the industry's fault. It's the editor's fault. I'm sorry, publishing world, it's your fault, because you slightly push them onto writers, I think. Yeah. And I the thing that I cannot stand is a twist that just, I always have this thing about the ones that give you whiplash, like, wait, what?
Where did that come from?
You can't, I mean, the best ones you should go, and I hate it when a twist is so obviously just being put in. I mean, I've read books where, really high profile books where it's literally just, it was almost a kind of, it was him, he did it, and it was somebody that wasn't remotely part of the story. And you think, I don't care if it was him.
Yeah.
And I really hate that. So I have had some twists in mine, and I think I generally, most of the time, I've got an idea in advance. But like you, Amanda, I'll probably come up with some a little bit later. I try not to just have an endless, they just love that word, don't they?
No, and I think it's there are a couple of, going back to reviews, it slightly makes me not weep. Well, yeah, sometimes I weep, I'll be honest. But not weep. But when you get the reviews that say, I could see the twist coming, and I'm like, well, that's on purpose, because I want the reader to start putting it together and to be involved, and maybe not sort of saying, well, I knew exactly what it was, but it being a sort of variation of what they suspect is, for me, absolutely legitimate in storytelling. I don't see why we have to be shocked and surprised. I think actually moving along with the story and understanding where that, if you like, twist or turn comes from, if you've got a killer twist, let's all face it, go and write that book. But they're few and far between.
I think it's a problem with the terminology almost, because, and it's only recently this whole twist, you have to have a twist, and but I think before that they used to call them reveals, and I think that's a much better term, because that is what we do. We reveal what has been going on all the time, and what was the whole point in the whole story, and what the characters have made happen. You reveal things that might be surprising, but shouldn't be completely out of the blue shocking, because that you should always be able to know, yes, as Caroline said, that yes, that makes sense. It's organic. It's come organically from what's happened before, and just like in life, there are things that shock you. There are events that you didn't expect to happen, that come out of the blue, but you respond to them and react to them in the way you do, because you're a person, and your character is established, and the people around you have established characters, and you're in an established situation, and so your response to that is expected. And it's anything that kind of just turns everything on its head and spins it on its head, so you're left with characters that you don't understand anymore, because why have they done that, or what have they done, and you're left with a scenario that doesn't resemble what it was before. It's very dissatisfying in a lot of ways. So yeah, I hate the word twist. I would much rather we went back to reveal. I hate it when they, and anyone who's might be watching who thinks that the authors put those little subtitles on Amazon that say, with a million twists that you won't see coming, that will make you drop dead from shock and surprise. We don't put that. We have no say over those, and there is nothing we could do about that. But I think people are very sick of them. They're sick of hearing that we've got to have a twist. They're sick of writing them. We're sick of reading them when it doesn't make sense. All the classic books, they have surprises, they have climactic events, they have reveals where you find out another layer to the story that you didn't know existed, but you might have suspected. All of those things work and have always worked, but we don't. I think this thing of you have to have a twist, and you not only have to have one twist, you have to have them like 5 or 6 all throughout, and whenever the tension's flagging, put in a twist. It's just a very kind of artificial way of telling a story, and it gets in the way of telling a good story, I think.
Yes. Yeah, down with twists. Well, there we go. We've sorted that one out, haven't we, ladies? One of us will sit there, will literally stop this panel and go, oh, that's an amazing twist. I've got to write the book. So we've done monsters, and I wanted to talk lastly. I mean, we've done brilliantly not to talk about lockdown and the pandemic and what's raging outside. But I would love to know, and I think we are all talking about it at the moment, is how you're managing. Are you coping with lockdown? Are you finding it easy to write, Caroline? Are you finding, how is it suiting you?
I'm missing going to the British Library, which is my sort of favourite writing space in the world. I'm missing that, I must admit. I mean, I didn't have very much other work on at the beginning of the pandemic, and I found that I didn't like it at all. I felt really strange not being busy, and it just made me feel quite miserable. But then I sort of went and found this children's book that I'd written a few years ago, and my old agent we hadn't been able to make it work, and I just had another look at it, and I showed it to my new current agent, who doesn't normally do children's books, and he really loved it, which was so lovely. And so I worked on that, and it was so different to the thing I'd just finished, because it was for 7 to 10-year-olds, and it's just silly. It's like really, really silly, and hopefully funny. And it was just lovely. It was just a really nice break from having come out of writing this incredibly dark book. But yeah, I'm not going to lie, it's not that easy always to write at home. I mean, there's 4 of us here, it's not a huge house. You can see, I mean, I'm embarrassed about my study in comparison to these 2 ladies with their walls.
Over there.
Yeah, well, that's all very well saying that, but this is the only spot the Wi-Fi works well, so I have to do it here with all the mess behind me. Yeah, it's not that easy to write at home, really. I'm looking forward to the library reopening and feeling I want to go back.
Yeah, I think that's the difference, isn't it?
But I found it right at the beginning really hard to write. When everything was so weird, and all of us were just glued to the news all the time, and every single day there was weird developments. The whole, but like three. Oh, whose is that? Oh shit, that's mine.
Oh, it's okay.
I'm coming from Australia.
You'd have to have
It's coming through my computer.
a language warning.
I can mute you.
We'll ignore it. I don't know how to turn it off.
I can mute you. I've muted her, everybody. Caroline and I can.
We're just going to shout rude things at you now.
So Caroline and I can now have a proper chat because I managed to get rid of Tammy. It's finished. Okay.
I said so many interesting things when I was muted. I did, but I was going to say that yes, the pandemic at the beginning, when it was all so weird and so completely like science fiction, and I was trying. I knew I had to finish a book over lockdown that had to be done, and I couldn't write anything because nothing that I could think of in my imagination was more fantastical than what was happening outside, and I just found my imagination kind of closed down because the real world was so bizarre and so outside, so science fiction-y. So for the first few weeks, I think a lot of people didn't write at all, or found it very difficult to write at all. And you kind of, it was so kind of apocalyptic what was happening that you kind of thought, why am I writing? Why am I writing this particular book when all this is happening outside? And it made you kind of question the value of what you were writing. It seems kind of so small compared to what was happening globally. But I think that kind of faded when we all got used to our strange new way of life and kind of adapted a bit. But so the last half of it, I'd say, has been okay, but then I don't have small children to homeschool, so I think we're lucky in that respect.
I think the three of us, I know we've spoken off panel about this, but it's definitely, I think those of us with older children, I was talking to some friends last night, and I don't want to be too smug about it, but for those of us with older children that might ordinarily not necessarily have been here with us, my eldest daughter wouldn't be here. My middle daughter she was supposed to be taking her A-levels, so in a week's time she should have been going off before university, and actually to have the three of them plus my eldest daughter's boyfriend here as well, it was a really unique time, 3 months to have those.
It's like bonus, wasn't it? And there's nowhere that none of their friends are out and doing things, so it's not like they're resentful.
You had their attention.
I think it was kind of like an extra bonus time. It was nice.
Anyway, I am glancing, unlike Tammy, at the clock that's ticking along, and we've done our time. So I would just like to say, Caroline, hold your book up again. There we go. And Tammy.
Yes, I'm trying to.
Tammy. So these are our new books that you're welcome to go and buy, but I definitely recommend the other two. So don't buy mine, buy theirs. And but as always, you're two lovely people. It's lovely to see your faces. I'm sorry we're not sitting on the beach at Lyme Regis enjoying a panel beer.
Next year in Lyme Regis.
But yeah, thank you to Paddy for organising Lyme Crime. Sorry.
Thank you to you.
Yes, and thanks, Amanda.
And it's been lovely to talk to you both. And thank you all for watching. And I hope you enjoyed Talking Monsters in Our Midst.
I did. Bye-bye. Bye.